When a company can't make payroll, its general remedy is to short the IRS of the withholdings from its employees. And when this happens, they generate a payroll tax debt. Now, a payroll tax has a separate video on my site because it is so common and is also so misunderstood. There actually isn't anything called payroll tax. It doesn't exist. So sites everywhere use it, but it isn't actually real. What it is an employer portion and an employee portion. The employee portion was withheld from employee checks, and the IRS cares a whole lot about it because it's money that was kept back that would have gone to employees but for tax. And the employer portion, which is the part that the employer has to match to Social Security and Medicare. And the IRS really doesn't care that much about that part because it didn't come out of employee checks. Now, one thing that's very important to understand is that the employee portion will be personally assessed against corporate officials, corporate accountants, CFOs, etc. It's also a myth that you have to own the company to be assessed personally with the TFRP. Any corporate officer can be assessed personally with the TFRP. The good news is that there are defenses to the TFRP. The TFRP must be assessed against anyone who is a signatory on the bank card for the corporation. So the TFRP stands for Trust Fund Recovery Penalty. It's a personal liability penalty against the officers of the corporation who did not pay over the employee taxes. In order to hold one officer liable, the IRS must show three things. First, that the officer had the ability to pay, i.e. was a signer on the bank account, had access to a corporate credit card, could literally make the payment. Second, that the officer controlled the tax-paying decisions of the corporation at the time that the taxes weren't paid. Generally, this is accepted to mean whoever signed the tax return, although there are exceptions to that. And finally, and usually where the battle is over willfulness, that the taxpayer was willful in not paying over the employee withholding. Now, up until 2007, the United States Tax Court held that financial hardship was not a reason to escape the trust fund recovery penalty. In other words, you could still be willful even if you were under financial hardship. But that changed in the United States Tax Court case in 2007, which now forms the basis for almost all TFRP defenses of corporate officers. It is extremely important, though, to understand that this is a penalty, it's not a tax, and as such, the legal protections associated with tax are not available for TFRP parties. You have 60 days from when you get notice that someone is seeking to hold you liable for the TFRP to oppose the TFRP. So payroll tax is the most insidious type of corporate tax because it carries inside of it an employee portion that you could be held personally liable for, regardless of whether or not you own the company. Now, you're going to be summoned to an IRS office where an IRS agent is going to walk you through a Form 4180. And then that IRS agent is going to make a decision about whether or not to hold you liable and kick off the 60-day appeal window. Now, why is this so important? It's so important because these taxes are not dischargeable in bankruptcy. If you are assessed personally for these taxes, and if you wait the 60 days, once we are on the 61st day, it is nearly impossible to do anything about them beyond file a 656L, doubt as to liability, offer and compromise, which is extremely expensive. So if you have an agent coming by and asking you about your payroll tax, it is imperative that you retain counsel as soon as possible. There aren't too many videos on this site where I say that, but when it comes to payroll tax, there is no messing around. It is a per se criminal offense under Section 7206 of the Internal Revenue Code to take money out of your employees' checks and not remit it to the United States. If a revenue officer comes to your office and wants to talk about payroll tax or interview you for the trust fund recovery penalty, get an attorney engaged as soon as possible. I have seen these cases go bad very quickly.